Hello guys, so welcome to our initial discussion regarding Chapter 5 of our Management Information Systems, Managing the Digital Future. Chapter 5 is discussing IT infrastructure and emerging technologies. So let's jump right in and get started. So one of the first things we want to do is define the IT infrastructure, which is simply put, but it can be very detailed and cumbersome. But if we're going to think of it on a very simplified term, we want to understand that it's a set of physical devices and software required to operate an enterprise, a set of firm-wide services, including computing platforms, providing computing services, physical facilities management services, IT management, education, other services. And we also want to understand that there's a service platform perspective involved. Now, the service platform perspective really just refers to the analyzing the actual services enabled by new technology tools. For example, a new PC might save an employee 1 hour per day in wait time for information, which would dramatically increase his or her value to the firm. Okay, it's really that simple. Now, if we look at Figure 5.1, which is, of course, is also found in your book, we can see that the services a firm is capable of providing to its customers and suppliers and employees are a direct function of its IT infrastructure. Ideally, this infrastructure should support the firm's business and information system strategy, ideally, right? But also know that new information technologies have a powerful impact on business and IT strategies, as well as the services that can be provided to the customer. The point of this slide, what I really want you to get out of this is to notice the illustration. So notice how the centrality of IT infrastructure and services to the achievement of the firm's success are in direct correlation to one another. Ultimately, what the firm delivers to customers, its quality, is a direct function of the power of its infrastructure. Okay? Now, one of the things that, or one of the most important things, right, if you're talking about IT infrastructure, of course, you want to lay the foundation, get some of the understanding, knowledge, and theory, but you also need to know what are the components of IT infrastructure, right? So what does the book share with us? So we know that it's computer hardware platforms, operating system platforms, enterprise software applications, data management and storage, networking, telecommunications platforms, internet platforms, and consulting systems integration services. So now, let's dig a little deeper. That is our high-level overview, but now let's talk about these independently, right? So we have computer hardware platforms, which are basic client machines, right? You have your desktop PCs, laptops, you have your servers, you have your mainframes, and things like that, right? Those are things that we're familiar with because we usually deal with them, whether directly or indirectly, on a daily basis. But then you have your operation systems platform. Now, this is where it gets a little bit more into, I guess you would say, a niche or a specialty, right? These are your coders. These are on a corporate level, they're dealing with servers, things like that. But on a client level, the operation system could be just a little bit more simple, right? So that could be the Microsoft Windows, the Android, the iOS, the Windows, Google Chrome operating system. It's just whatever. And I'm glad that Google Chrome is here because to make it even more simplified, My client level operating system could be the Drive, the Google Drive, right? Or something like that. Then you have your enterprise software application. Now, the market for enterprise software application is approximately $250 billion. These applications are considered to be part of IT infrastructure. Traditionally, large firms were the most prominent users of enterprise software, but firms such as Microsoft are trying to move into the untapped market of small and medium-sized businesses that might benefit from less expansive versions of the same software. When we're discussing data management and storage, some of the database software providers that are listed here, like Oracle, Microsoft SQL, Sybase, MySQL, IBM, and then the physical data storage for large-scale systems like EMC Corporation. And at this point, and I know we've discussed it in the classroom, but I just wanted to remind you why the data management and storage aspect is so vitally important. Keep in mind that the amount of new information in the world is doubling every 3 years, which also drives the need for more efficient data management and storage, and safety, right? So we have to also be concerned with the safety or the protection or the privacy of that information that's being stored. Networking, telecommunications, and platforms, excuse me. Network operation systems like Windows Server, Linux, Unix, and network hardware providers like Cisco, Juniper Networks, telecommunication services. All of these are important when it comes to the networking and telecommunications platform, especially, for example, you know, a lot of times we just ascribe it to data usage, right? When we're using web services on our phones and things like that. But that's all part of the network and telecommunications. And then, of course, we have, last but not least, or finally, we have, actually not the last one, but we have the internet platforms, which is like our hardware, software management services to support company websites and intranets. Now, the internet platforms are yet another area where Microsoft is featured prominently. Students at this point, you should be able to appreciate the sheer size of Microsoft, right? It's a known name. So the trend, though, since the late 1990s has been to reduce the number of servers by increasing their size and power. So then we have Dell, HP, Compaq, and IBM have been the beneficiaries of this trend. Now, multi-core processors and blade servers are two ways in which server power can be radically increased without increasing the footprint or the power requirements. Now, that is just a lot of information regarding the tech side, but I just wanted you to be aware of how the internet platforms are just basically working in a nutshell. Consulting and system integration services. Implementing new infrastructure requires significant changes in business processes and procedures, training, education, and software education. So now this is a task that firms struggle to achieve on their own, which drives the need for these services. This MIS course will provide you with an excellent background to be a business systems consultant, but most business consulting today involves developing business processes and supporting systems. One recent report in 2010 found that MIS majors, your major, were the most satisfied group of college graduates because their education led directly to a job. So just keep that in mind if you're interested in going into this consulting side of things. So now we've talked about the individual parts. Now let's talk about the infrastructure, the ecosystem for IT. Now there are several major components that must be coordinated to provide a firm or a company with a coherent IT infrastructure. Listed here are major technologies and suppliers for each component, right? Take a second and just look at this figure, right? Oh, some things I want you to notice would be companies that appear under each heading or companies that appear repeatedly, and how many items on this list that really may still be that you may still be unfamiliar with. Because we see here that you can actually be part of, some of these IT companies are actually part of more than one step in the process or part of multiple parts of the ecosystem. So now, what are some of the current trends in computer hardware platforms, right? So business computing is increasingly moving from PCs and desktops to mobile devices, and managers are increasingly using these to coordinate work and communicate with employees. Here we have what are the current trends in computer hardware. The second part of the discussion, we saw that in the first part, and I really didn't go into it because it was so much part of our daily lives that like the mobile and digital platform, the consumerization of IT and bring your own device, or BYOD. But then when we get to the second part of the discussion, we see quantum computing and virtualization. So quantum computing is in its infancy, but has the potential to revolutionize computing speeds and power. And virtualization actually allows organizations to optimize their use of resources in new ways, and also to take advantage of spare computing power by allowing a single resource to act as multiple resources. On-demand or utility computing describes a payment structure in which use is dependent upon actual time or power used. Now, cloud computing refers to a platform networked access to remote services. Cloud computing allows organizations to avoid the expenses of maintaining their own hardware and software, relying on the cloud instead. And here we see a good example of this from Amazon Web Services, right? So we see Amazon, their cloud offers their clients or customers the ability to not only compute but network. There's content delivery. They have to worry about data storage, and all of these things are components of Amazon's web services. Those are all things that are needed to make things go smoothly. Now, if we're going to also talk about the current trends in computer, we also need to discuss green computing and high-performance power-saving processors. Now, data centers will use approximately 2% of all U.S. electrical power. Cutting power consumption in data centers has become both a serious business and an environmental challenge as well. At this point, take a moment to think, right, and ask yourself, what forms of green computing have you noticed already? And bring it to the classroom. We will discuss it in classroom, because this is going to be something that is really going to be coming up. Remember, because the information is expanding or doubling every 3 years. So this is going to be an important topic, and I want you guys to be forward thinkers. So let's take a moment to think about that and then bring it to the classroom. We also have the TCO, or the total cost of ownership model. Now, TCO is a way of quantifying some of the hidden costs of hardware. The TCO model can be used to analyze both the direct and indirect costs to help firms determine the actual cost of specific technology implementations. When all these cost components are considered, the TCO could potentially be significantly more expensive than the original purchase price of the equipment. But as we see here, that you can also reduce it as well using this model. Now, we have discussed in the classroom in previous chapters about the competitive five forces model. But there's also a competitive forces model for IT infrastructure investment. Investment being the key word, right? So some of the questions you would want to ask as far as moving or reallocating some money towards an investment for an IT infrastructure, or a change in your IT infrastructure, or growth in your IT infrastructure, would be the market demand for your services, right? Or what has your business strategy changed? Or has your IT strategy, infrastructure, and cost changed? You know, do you have the ability to do that? You also want to consider the information technology assessment, your competitors' firm services that your competitors offer, and also your IT infrastructure investments by your competitors as well. So now, let me ask you this. How great of an impact do competitors' services and investments have on firms' IT services and infrastructure? You know, is it wise to rely on those factors alone to determine what kind of services your firm provides? For instance, your competitors may not be the industry's best example of how to develop IT services. In fact, your entire industry might be technological laggards. In this case, it might be better to look at best practices in other industries which have a reputation for superior IT services and capabilities. Okay, so next, let's look at the diagram of the items that we just discussed, right? We have the competitive forces model for IT infrastructure. So now there are 6 factors you can use to answer the questions that we saw on the previous screen, right? How much should our firm spend on IT infrastructure? So I want you to, in the book, take a look at this competitive forces model and be ready to discuss it a little bit more in detail, one-on-one, or within the classroom structure. The purpose of this video is just simply to introduce the chapter to you, and we will go on further discussion in the classroom. But while you're taking a look at it, I want you to, I want to know, do you feel that any one of the 6 is especially more important or unimportant than the other or the rest? Oops. So be ready to discuss those questions, and also for our class discussion, we want to also look at, and we'll see some videos regarding this as well, what business benefits do cloud computing services provide, and what problems do they solve? What are the disadvantages of cloud computing? And what kinds of businesses are most likely to benefit from using cloud computing, and why? Okay, guys, that's it for this time, or for now. I will see you guys in the classroom. Okay, have a great day.